Kamala Harris knows that the end is near, and she knows that she's in dire straits, and she knows that her career is almost over. How does she know all of this? Well, because CNN told her. Look at it. This is from Huffington Post. CNN data reporter spots 3 obvious signs that could point to Donald Trump win. 3 obvious signs. Now, I've been pointing out obvious signs that Donald Trump's going to win this election for what seems like forever, but let's go to the Huffington Post. CNN senior political data reporter Harry Enton on Wednesday suggested the signs all along will have been obvious if former President Donald Trump wins the 2024 election. Enton cited voter satisfaction polls with the direction of the country, President Joe Biden's current poor approval rating, and Republican registration numbers as key factors that could, in hindsight, be used to explain a Trump victory. I'm going to break this down for you. I'm going to play for you everything that this guy said because this is important. Remember, this is CNN. This is their lead polling strategist. This is him telling everybody Donald Trump is going to win this election. And when he does, you have only yourself to blame because the signs were there all along. And the first sign, and he went back into history. This isn't just recent polling because, you know, the way to read polling, and our good buddy Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen, he told us this. He said, you can't just look at a poll. You've got to look at the historical accuracy of the poll. That's how we know in Pennsylvania, there's a 5-point swing for the Democrat. In most of the last few, Pennsylvania polls, the Democrat has led by 5 points. In 2016, Hillary Clinton led by 5 points, but she lost the state to Donald Trump. So Donald Trump, when he's reported to be neck and neck with Kamala Harris at 48-48 in Pennsylvania, really has a 5-point advantage, and it's probably more like 53-43. He's probably dominating. That's the stuff they don't want to tell you. But Harry Enton from CNN went back into the archives. He went deep, man. And look at what he found out about these 3 factors that make it obvious that Kamala Harris is going to lose and Donald Trump is going to win.
Look, just 28% of Americans, voters, think the country is going in the right direction, is on the right track. And I want you to put that into a historical perspective for you. Okay, what's the average percentage of the public that thinks that the country is on the right track when the incumbent party loses? It's 25%. That 25% looks an awful bit like that 28% up there. It doesn't look anything like this 42% doesn't look anything like this 28%. So the bottom line is very few Americans think the country is on the right track at this particular point. It tracks much more with when the incumbent party loses than with it wins. In fact, I went back through history. There isn't a single time in which 28% of the American public thinks the country is going on the right track in which the incumbent party actually won.
There isn't a single time in history, in all of history. Harry Enton, CNN, they go back in history. Let me pull this up again. They go back in history and they try to find another time in history when the incumbent party, Joe Baby Biter Biden, they try to go back and say, hey, Joe Biden's at 28%. 28% of the United States of America, 28% of voters, 28% of Americans think the United States is on the wrong track. Have we ever had a presidential election in the history of our great country where 28% think the country's on the right track and the incumbent party wins? No, because Americans aren't that stupid, no matter what Kamala Harris and Bill Clinton want you to think. Bill Clinton wants you to think that you know the economy was better under Donald Trump and you know the economy will be better under Donald Trump, but vote for Kamala Harris anyway. And he thinks there's dolts out there going, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, there are dolts out there doing that, but not many. 28% say the country's on the right track. That's almost 1 in 4. And they're like, this has never happened. No incumbent has ever won with those kind of numbers. And if you look historically, there's more bad news for Kamala Harris, Joe Biden and the Democrats, and more great news for liberty, love, and freedom defending patriot garbage like us. Listen to this.
Back in 2008, George W. Bush, his approval rating was down in the 20s. Did a Republican succeed George W. Bush? No. How about in 1968? Lyndon Baines Johnson, his net approval rating was negative. Did a Democrat succeed Lyndon Baines Johnson? No. How about in 52? Harry S. Truman, his approval rating was in the 20s, if not the upper teens. Did a Democrat succeed Harry S. Truman in 52? My memory, no.
No. None of those times. And look at this. He goes back through every single one of these polls. It's amazing. It's amazing when you look at the presidential approval rating
Back in
through
2008.
history. Truman had a negative approval rating where less than Joe Biden's is, but there was no Democrat that followed him. Johnson, same way. Bush, same way. Joe Biden cannot have a Democrat follow him up because, again, his policies are Kamala Harris's policies. It's even worse for her because it's not like some new Democrat is coming in going, you know what, I disagree with all these policies. It's the same Democrat. It's the same policies. It's the same White House. Joe Biden basically stepped aside and put in a worse version of himself with the hopes of winning back the presidency. But again, I don't think Joe Biden wanted to win back the presidency. I'm pretty sure that Joe Biden wanted to tank the Democrats. I'm pretty sure that when Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer walked into the Oval Office and threatened him with the 25th Amendment or threatened to release some weird and bizarre text messages or threatened to release photos of him biting their babies. Oh, wait, never mind. They don't care. They don't care about that. They're fine. They put that kind of stuff on Twitter. Yeah, they're fine with baby biting. I imagine when Joe Biden was forced out of office by his own people, that he and most likely his devious and dubious and diabolical wife, Dr. Jill Biden, and his crack smoking, gun toting, non-tax paying son, Hunter Biden, I imagine the three of them got together and said, you know what, fine. We'll go, but we are not going to go quietly. We'll go, but we are burning the house down. We'll go, but we are taking them all down with us. They don't want Kamala Harris. We're going to endorse Kamala Harris. They don't think Kamala Harris can win. We're going to make sure she's the candidate, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure she loses. And that's exactly that's the playbook they're running. There's no other explanation. But there's yet a third reason why CNN believes it's totally obvious that Kamala Harris is going to lose and Donald Trump is going to be victorious.
Republicans have been registering voters in big, huge numbers. They have been gaining in party registration versus the Democrats in the swing states with party registration. We're talking Arizona. I think it's a 5-point. They've expanded their lead from 5 points from where it was back in 2020. How about Nevada? Big Republican registrations there. They like the early vote. How about North Carolina? Big Republican registration games. How about Pennsylvania? We spoke about it before a few months ago. Big Republican party registration gains versus from where they were 4 years ago. So Republicans are putting more Republicans in the electorate. The Democratic number versus the Republican number has shrunk. And so the bottom line is if Republicans win come next week, Donald Trump comes next week, the signs all along will have been obvious. We would look at the right direction being very low, Joe Biden's approval rating being very low, and Republicans really registering numbers. You can't say you weren't warned.
If Donald Trump wins next week, it was fairly obvious why he did. CNN reporting. When Donald Trump wins next Tuesday or Wednesday or a week from then, whenever it happens to be, whenever we get the final numbers, whenever we know Donald Trump has surpassed the 270 electoral vote limit needed, the requirement to become the next president of the United States, as soon as that moment hits, we'll know why. Because according to CNN, the signs were obvious. The signs were 3/4 of the country believes we're on the wrong track. 3/4 of the 75% of Americans say we're on the wrong track. We're going the wrong way. We are going full speed toward a cliff, and the engineer is Joe Biden. And the confidence in Joe Biden is also historically low. And never before in history has somebody, a president with historically low confidence like that, ever had a member of his same party follow him up. Never before has any president or any poll that shows the country believes, and the majority of the Americans believe we're on the right track, shown that the incumbent stays in office. And then most importantly, Republicans, thanks to Scott Pressler and a bunch of other people, have been outpacing Democrats. They're making more Republicans. They're out there and they're making more Republicans, and they're making more Republicans faster than they can make more Democrats. And I know what you're thinking, but Mark Kaye, they brought all these illegals in, like millions and millions of illegals have come into the border. And I have a question. Aren't they all voting? Well, you would think so. But the Supreme Court stepped in yesterday and did something that was glorious in the state of Virginia. And the Supreme Court stayed the order in Virginia and allowed the voter rolls to be purged of illegal immigrants. Supreme Court's conservative justices leave in place Virginia's purge of voter registrations. This is from the AP. Now, this is one of the worst written headlines. Because it's not the Supreme Court's conservative justices, it's the Supreme Court's justices. And they leave in place Virginia's, it's not a purge of voter registrations, it's a purge of illegal immigrants, illegal aliens who have no right to vote, who are on the voter registration polls. The Supreme Court's conservative majority on Wednesday left in place Virginia's purge of voter registrations that the state says is aimed at stopping people who are not U.S. citizens from voting. What do you mean that the state says? If you're not a U.S. citizen, you shouldn't be on the voter roll. Why is this even a Supreme Court case? Well, because the Democrats sued Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin. It's true. The High Court, over the dissents of the 3 liberal justices, shocker, granted an emergency appeal from Virginia's Republican administration led by Governor Glenn Youngkin. The court provided no rationale for its action, which is typical in emergency appeals. You don't need a rationale other than the Constitution to say illegal immigrants should not be voting. The justices acted on Virginia's appeal after a federal judge found that the state illegally purged more than 1,600 voter registrations in the past 2 months. Now, what happened is, Youngkin said voters who believe they were improperly removed from the rolls can still vote in the election because they have same-day registration. And so there is the ultimate safeguard in Virginia. No one is being precluded from voting, and therefore I encourage every single citizen to go vote. But the problem is that in the state of Virginia, you have a lot of illegals who are on the voter rolls, and you have Democrats from the White House, from the DNC, from Kamala Harris's campaign, suing to keep illegal immigrants on the voter roll. They're suing to make sure that people who cannot legally vote are not purged from the voting roll. Why would they do that? Why would you want an illegal alien to be able to go into a voting booth or a voting location and find their name on the registration so that they might, accidentally get a ballot? Why would you want something like that? The Supreme Court didn't want it. And that's why they put in place this order. Wednesday, October 30th, the application for stay presented to the Chief Justice and by him referred to the court is granted. The October 25th, 2024 order of the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia, blah, 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 is stayed pending the disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals. Look at the bottom, though. This is the important part. Oh, right here. Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, and Justice Jackson would deny the application. They talk about Donald Trump handpicking. They always say Donald Trump, Kamala loves to say this. She goes, Donald Trump handpicked Supreme Court justices to help him overturn Roe v. Wade. Donald Trump handpicked Supreme Court justices to help spread his abortion bans. First of all, that's what you do. There's no other way. Every president has handpicked their Supreme Court justices. When Barack Obama picked Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, did he hold a raffle? Did he throw a dart at a wall? No, he handpicked them. He looked at them. He saw their voting record. He saw if there was anything in their past that might disqualify them. He prepared them. He went over this. He went over that. And he handpicked Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor. When Donald Trump became president, guess what? He did what every single president before him who ever chose a Supreme Court nominee did. He handpicked them. Yet Kamala Harris makes it look... You know what would be worse? Is if a president didn't handpick a Supreme Court nominee and they just let it up. I don't know. They did like a Twitter poll or an X poll. Oh, shoot. So you got to slap me. But Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, Supreme Court justices placed on the bench by Democrats, Joe Biden and Barack Obama. They put these people on the bench. And these people were, to use Kamala Harris's words, handpicked to make sure that illegal aliens can stay on the voting roll because they denied the application for a stay. If it were up to them, if there were a handful more, like just a couple more justices that thought like Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, if there were just a couple more of those DEI justices on the bench, you'd have a lot of illegal aliens on the voter roll in Virginia, and not just Virginia, but all the other states, because now that this is the Supreme Court's law of the land, now that there is a precedent for it, these kinds of voter rolls and these kinds of names can come off of voter rolls all over the country.